Hello and welcome back to my latest video. So on this video we are looking at the career of former heavyweight champion Tommy Burns, who had a decent sized career, not a large career for the era by any means, okay, but we will go through his career. So let us start on his main opponents, okay, and as we can see, Tommy Burns fought a trilogy of fights against the great Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, fully splitting the trilogy into 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw. He also fought and defeated former heavyweight champion, of course, Marvin Hart, who'd also held a win over Jack Johnson in the time period before their fight. So that's another good win there, and he did lose, of course, in 1908 to the Galveston Giant, Jack Johnson. Next up is capable contender Mike Shrek. Okay, Tommy Burns fought him on 2 occasions, suffering a loss and a draw, and he also had the same results against one of the Sullivan brothers, Jack Twin Sullivan, who he also fought twice, suffering 1 loss and 1 draw. Twice Tommy Burns beat contender Dave Barry, and twice he fought former middleweight contender, okay, Hugo Kelly, who was a tough middleweight contender. Tommy Burns fought him to a draw on 2 occasions from 2 fights. He also gained 2 wins over heavyweight contender Bill Lang, and also gained win over another heavyweight contender, fireman Jim Flynn. Okay, the final name on here for Tommy Burns is Bill Squires, whom Tommy Burns fought 3 times, winning all 3 fights. So there's 19 fights there, okay. Tommy Burns doesn't have a deep resume per se. He fought a few standout names, a few tough contenders, but really his resume doesn't have the depth there. Some people say they rate him more highly on his title accomplishments, but I always say, well, you have to also factor who he beat in those title accomplishments. Yes, the accomplishments are accomplishments, and we have to factor that, but it's even better factored if it's against high-level opposition, and not always in Tommy Burns' case it was. But certainly he had a tough career, even by some modern career standards. So there's his basic breakdown. 19 fights listed there. Tommy Burns won 10, lost 4 and drew 5. So when we go on to the first of his stat slides, Tommy Burns scored 35 knockouts in his career, 13 of them in 3 rounds or less, and he also scored 6 in the first round. Now he scored 0 KOs in all the below categories against champions, Hall of Famers, pound for pounders and rated fighters. Tommy Burns scored 0s in all 4 categories, and in total rounds boxed throughout his career, Tommy Burns boxed a total of 510 rounds. 137 rounds he fought were title fight rounds. Tommy Burns also fought 80 rounds against champions, 60 rounds against Hall of Famers, and 80 rounds against pound for pounders. Now against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions, Tommy Burns, pre-rating era fighter, fought 0 rounds. So there's the KOs and rounds boxed. When we go on to the slide against champions and his record against champions, Tommy Burns had 5 fights against champions. That includes 2 wins, 2 losses and 1 draw. He defeated 2 individual champions. They were Philadelphia Jack O'Brien and Marvin Hart. And in terms of knockouts against champions, Tommy Burns scored 0. And when we go to the Hall of Fame category, we see Tommy Burns had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, 1 against Jack Johnson, 3 against Jack O'Brien. He scored 1 win with 2 losses and 1 draw from those 4 fights against Hall of Famers, and he defeated 1 Hall of Famer, the great Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, but he did not score a knockout win over him, so Hall of Famers knocked out individually is 0. So when we go on to the final of the more niche opponent categories, pound for pound fighters, okay, Tommy Burns had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw. He also defeated 2 individual pound for pound fighters. They were Philadelphia Jack O'Brien and Marvin Hart. Now he beat those 2 pound for pounders, but he scored 0 knockouts over pound for pounders individually. So for Tommy Burns, when we go on to his rated opponent slide, we can see that Tommy Burns, pre-rating era fighter, so he has no fights against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions. Tommy Burns also thus defeated no individual rated fighters and scored knockouts over no individual rated opponents. So on to the title fight slide. Tommy Burns had a large title fight record for the time, 13 world title fights. Now his title fight record looks fairly cleanish, 11 wins with only 1 loss to Jack Johnson and 1 draw. Tommy Burns also made 11 title defences, and in terms of title fight knockouts, Tommy Burns scored a total of 9 title fight KOs in his career. Now, against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters and ring champions, Tommy Burns pre-rating era scores 0s. Against world champions in title fights, Tommy Burns scored 2 wins. He scored 1 win against Hall of Famers in title fights, and he also scored 2 wins against pound for pounders in title fights. So as we've seen through video, Burns' career has some highlights and other weaker areas. Certainly his resume, while having some good names, is not as deep. You know, when I do Dan Creedon's video over the next few weeks, he has a much deeper resume, even though he was never a world champion. You know, when we see other fighters like, Tim Callahan and all these other fighters, you'll see even fighters like the Sicilian Swordfish, Casper Leon. Other fighters have way better resumes, deeper resumes than Tommy Burns, but because they don't have that title, they get no recognition whatsoever. So, just to close out on Burns, okay, let us go on to the title win slide. And Tommy Burns, in terms of titles won, he captured, of course, the world heavyweight title. Tommy Burns was also lineal heavyweight champion of the world and undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So a shorter video, okay, not as much information as Jack Johnson, a shorter video, a lighter resume. There is Tommy Burns, former heavyweight champion. He'll now be scored into my new growing top 1,000 list today also in my current live list, because the top 1,000 playlist I'm doing is on a frozen list. When I started that playlist, my live list continues. 2 new fighters have been added there today, 1 American, 1 UK fighter. So that list continues to grow. Okay, so my final top 1,000 I do. Okay, if it is my final one, we'll have a lot of new fighters in. Even above the top 1,000 I'm doing now, that still has, as I've highlighted already, and will highlight more new fighters since we last top 1,000. So there's the video on Tommy Burns. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow with another career video. I'm the Boxing Librarian, and I'm out for now.